Hi, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. I hope that you are doing well today, guys. I know that some of you must be wondering, you're on a bit early. And some must be wondering, ah, the topic is different. Well, for today, guys, I actually be doing two lives. So usually on a Monday, or at least last week, Monday, I did it as well, where I actually looked at what is known as Moshi Mashi Monday. And that is where I look at the roundup of what has taken place over the week. However, this week I noticed that there was something about criminal convictions in the news, or that was mentioned. And so, I have a lot of information on criminal conviction and people not being able to actually find employment after. So I decided that I want to do a live by itself to do with criminal convictions and actually integrating back into society. Because perhaps some people are not aware of the type of employment that they may be exempted from doing. They probably don't know the difference between spent and unspent convictions. So in this live, what I'm going to do is to sort of, educate us, educate the family, because perhaps you have a relative who has been struggling to find employment after a conviction. So I'm going to give you the whole breakdown in this video. However, what I must say is that in the UK, if you are from a different country and you have a custodial sentence of more than a year, automatically after you have served your time behind bars, then automatically what is on the card for you is deportation to your original country. So that is out of the way. Everything else that I'm going to explain to you is going to be what the law actually says about your convictions and how you declare it, etc. The first thing I want to do is to start off by telling the difference between a spent conviction and an unspent conviction when you are going for employment. Now, a spent conviction is one that you do not need to declare to your prospective employer, and an unspent is one that you must declare to your prospective employer. Now, as I go along, you will understand the difference because there are different requirements based on the length of time that you have been behind bars. So you will notice that sometimes on an employment form, you will see where they say declare any unspent convictions. Now, does that mean that they're talking about convictions where you have not served your time? No. There are certain convictions that after a time you do not need to tell anybody about it, right? The law does not force you to tell anybody about it, while for others you will need to disclose it. That is why some employers have actually placed on the application form that you should declare both spent and unspent convictions. Now, let's go further into saying what I'm telling you a bit more about spent convictions. Now, based on the length of time that you have been behind bars, there are certain guidelines. Here are the guidelines. So, if you have been behind bars for 30 months, but less than 4 years in an adult prison, then 7 years after you have been released, up to 7 years after you have been released, your conviction is known as unspent. What does that mean? It means that if you are asked whether or not you have a criminal conviction, you need to tell them that yes, you do have a criminal record, you have a criminal conviction. After you have been out of prison for 7 months, 7 years, after 7 years, you no longer need to declare it to any employer. So 7 years, after 7 years, for if you have for an adult, if you it's a youth offender, it's after 3.5 years after you have been released. If you have been in custodial prison for over 6 months, but less than 30 months. So remember, the first one was over 30 months, but less than 4 years. Then you have 7 years wherein you have to declare it each time you are asked. After the 7 years, you do not. Youth prison, 3.5 years after you have been released, you will still need to declare that you have an unspent conviction. Now, in the second case, if you have been in prison for 6 months, for over 6 months, but less than 30 months, then the first 4 years after you have been released, you need to declare that you have an unspent conviction. That is if you have been in an adult prison. If you have been in a youth offenders prison, then it is 2 years after you have been released that you need to say, yes, I have unspent conviction. After the 2 years have passed, if you are asked, you are going to say, I have a spent conviction. And remember, for the spent conviction, you do not necessarily need to declare that to any employer because the law backs you, say that you do not need to declare it. The third instance is if you have been in prison for 6 months, for only 6 months, then up to 2 years after you have been released from an adult prison, you will need to declare it. If you are being released from a youth offenders prison, then for the first 18 months after your release, you need to declare that you have a criminal conviction. If you were not given a custodial sentence, meaning you were not given prison sentence, however, if you were given a community order or a youth rehabilitation order, then you need to declare this up to 1 year after you have done the community order. If you are being released from an adult prison, if it's from a youth offenders prison, it is 6 months after you have been released. So the problem can come in if you do not declare that you have a criminal record when in truth and in fact you do. That is something that can prevent you from getting into employment. And I'm going to go through everything item by item. So if you notice, all of what I have said so far, they can be spent, meaning so you have done your time, meaning you have been safe, meaning nothing happened 7 years after you have been released, then you no longer need to declare it. However, there are some convictions that will never ever be spent for as long as you live. What does that mean? It means that for every employment that you try to go into for the rest of your life, you will need to declare that you actually have unspent criminal convictions. What I'm going to do, I'm going to look it up and tell you the type of convictions that will never ever be spent. So here are the ones that will never ever be spent. If there is a sentence of imprisonment for life, cannot be spent, always have your criminal record. 2, detention in a youth offenders institution for over 4 years. So if you have been as a youth, if you have been behind bars for over 4 years, you will always have a criminal record. It can never be spent. Acts of terrorism, sexual offenses, those can never ever be spent. So as long as you live, you will need to be declaring those to employers to say that you have a criminal conviction. If you notice, I've said 4 years and over if you have been in a youth offenders prison. The same thing applies for the adults as well. If you have been before bars, behind bars for 4 years and over, that criminal record will always be there. Now, some people actually try to, I would say, trick the system because they know that, it is no secret that with a criminal record, employers are a bit hesitant to actually employ you. So for that reason, some people are hesitant to actually say that they have a criminal record when they actually have it. Criminal record. However, it is in your best interest to declare it. Now, what happens if you actually get a job, after saying you have no criminal record, and then your employer, that they do the disclosure, they do the criminal checks and so forth. Now, a lot of employers, sometimes what they do is that they give you the job pending a successful criminal record, disclosure and barring service, criminal record. If it comes back clear, then you know that you can keep the job. So why they say it is pending? Because it all depends on what is written on your disclosure, your criminal record form that is returned. Now, if you declare that you have no criminal record, no convictions, and the DBS comes back to say that yes, you actually have unspent convictions, without question, that employer can fire you, no questions. Why? Because you got the job under false pretense. I know that some of you will say, but if I actually declare it, I will not get the job. Look, there is always a way. One way around this, you must declare it, guys. If you have the criminal record, you must declare it. However, there is something that you can actually write to support you. So along with any application form that you are completing, you are going to tick that yes, you have the criminal record, but along with the application form, you are going to write a letter that is known as a self-disclosure letter. I mean, your probation officer perhaps will help you with this, or perhaps they would have told you about this. Now, the self disclosure letter is a letter that you compose yourself. It is a letter where you speak about how you have been reformed, how you are sorry for what has happened, and to totally probably elaborate on some of the things that you have done to actually help yourself, and something that will convince the employer to actually give you a chance, right? So it is something that is going to be remorseful for what you have done. But under no circumstances should you lie about your criminal record, right? Most employers, or a lot of employers, actually are willing to give people a second chance. But remember, the final decision is with the employer. So if the employer, after listening to everything, after you have, shown remorse, if they have decided that, look, they still do not want to give you the job, just remember it is the final decision is with the employer. However, some people actually are not given a chance because you have not been going for the right jobs. Remember that after you have been released from prison, your first aim should not be to get your ideal job. Your first aim should be to get a job, because once someone has employed you, right, then of course others will be more willing to actually employ you after after, right? So it just makes it easier for you to actually get back into the system. Now, what happens if you cannot find a job? Remember that volunteering can actually go on your CV as well. So you perhaps may wish to volunteer your services for a period of time just so that you will have something to place on your CV, and also so that someone will be willing to give you a reference as well. Some people try the route of going into self-employment, and there are some organizations that perhaps your parole officer will know about, that they actually give offenders a second chance. So these are things that you can actually speak to your parole officer about, and they might be able to point you in the right direction. However, remember, there are some convictions that will automatically exempt you from certain type of jobs. And these are some of them. So if your conviction, had something to do with violence, then of course you might not want to be applying for jobs where you have to work with children, around the vulnerable. If you're going to work in retail, any situation where you have to deal face to face with customers, you you might not be the first person that the employer would think of for giving that type of position. So remember, the type of jobs that you're looking for as well might just be the hindrance as to what is preventing you from getting a job. If the crime had something to do with robbery, theft, then automatically anything to do with money, in a money handling situation, finance situation, then of course you're going to struggle to find employment in those sectors. However, I should not say however. In addition to that, even though I have said that after a certain number of years, then your conviction is spent, meaning that you do not need to declare them. There are certain type of jobs where no matter what, no matter how long the offense was committed, you will still need to declare them to your prospective employers. I'm going to take a quick look. I'm going to look at the type of jobs where you will definitely need to declare your criminal convictions. Just give me a minute. Let me look it up because I know I have it. I know that it's some accounting jobs. So let me find it and then I will tell you about them. Sorry about that, guys, but I'm looking because I want to make sure that, I give you all the information so that you know the type of jobs that you will be exempt from. Okay, so these are the jobs that you will definitely need to declare them. So if it's for jobs as accountants, doctors, nurses, midwives, solicitors, any school-based jobs, social services, you are definitely anything to do with training as well. You are definitely required to actually disclose your convictions. So these are actually ways how you can actually integrate back into society. In addition, if you still struggle, guys, to get into employment, remember that I have said, you can volunteer your services, you can work with your parole officer who might be able to help you as well, point you in the right direction as to actually, where you can go to certain organizations and they might be willing to give you a second chance. In addition to that, if you still struggle, just remember that there is the job center, there is income support. While you are looking for a job, they might be able to help you out in getting accessing some benefits until you are back on your feet or until you have secured your first employment. However, in order for you to access like income support or any type of benefits, remember that you must be able to provide a proof of address. That is the only thing that they actually need from you. I'm just checking to make sure that I have not missed anything. Okay, so in addition to actually the income support that you get from the job center, if you need support with CV, they might be able to help you with that as well. Now, if the job center is not is far from you or anything like that, another institution, government institution that might be able to point you in the right direction is the Citizens Advice Bureau. So any type of support that you need, either go to the job center, but remember, in order for you to start claiming like the income support, you must be able to provide your a proper address because that is what they use as well. So I hope that this, will actually help. And I hope that the person who actually put it in the news to say that, he has been out of prison and nobody wants to give him a second chance. I hope that these will actually, give you some ideas, point you in the right direction. And remember, guys, if all else fails, meaning volunteering and volunteering, if that's out of the question, you probably want to do just a little short course that could help you as well. But I would imagine that the first thing, if everything fails, I would definitely encourage people to go down the volunteering route to build your work ethics and everything. It will help you, it will build your skills as well. And remember, your first job should not be you looking for your ideal job. Really, what you need is some experience. What you also need is something to put on your CV to say that you have had some recent work experience. Now, I'm at the end of this live streaming. Immediately after, or not too long from now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to close this live stream, this one. Then I'm going to start the Shimashi Monday, where I go through a rundown of the news. So just remember, for today, I actually have two live streaming. See you in a bit, guys. Take care.